proceed, I want to introduce la abogada Alicia Moore.
Alicia, you can see them here. This is page. Okay.
Hola, ¿cómo están?
So I wanted to start very easy and very simple. What is naturalization and is it still worth it? ¿Qué es naturalización y sigue valiendo la pena aplicar para la ciudadanía?
Yeah, yo diría que sí. La ciudadanía is applying for your citizenship, the N400, and it's definitely worth it because a person who's a permanent resident, a lawful permanent resident, can still lose their green card at any moment, and that is happening much more frequently with the current administration. So it's definitely worth it, and it's a great time to apply, but you should definitely talk to an attorney before you file because there are efforts being made by this administration to take away your citizenship, and it's also a way that you could become subject to deportation proceedings. Así que hay que hablar con un abogado antes de aplicar la ciudadanía porque hay gente que eso te ponga en problemas aplicando la ciudadanía si no calificaba o si tenía un problema antes en el caso.
Yeah, and it's always worth it. I mean, if you want to travel without worrying about being hassled on the way back in because maybe you have some criminal history or something sketchy, because if people who got NACARA or the amnesties and things like that, like immigration doesn't know what that means anymore, so they cured a lot of problems. Like people may have had deportation orders in the past and the NACARA cancels it, right? So the other thing, when you apply for citizenship, they want to look at how you became a resident and try to see if there's something wrong with it, right? And then oftentimes they're telling you there's something wrong with it, and that's not true. So a lot of people will get these decisions that are like, oh, I'm not a resident. What do you mean I'm not a resident? I have a card in my hand. So that's why it's important to talk to an attorney. And like always, you want to get the citizenship just so that immigration can never do anything to you again, right? So el punto es con la ciudadanía estás protegido y inmigración nunca te puede amenazar o dar problemas. Y hay varias razones para hablar con un abogado porque si ganaste amnistía o algo así, inmigración siempre está buscando manera de decir que ganaste la residencia en error. Y es su obligación probar que lo ganaste bien de nuevo. So, es como estás aplicando la residencia otra vez. Y ahora con la administración siempre quieren dar a la gente un tiempo difícil.
Right, right. And so that is a great transition to, benefits of citizenship, right? As you mentioned, one of the things is, as a U.S. citizen, it is much easier to travel outside of the U.S., right? Mm-hmm. But we know that that's not the only benefit, right?
Another one is you can vote. There are people who are very unhappy with this administration, and I've actually talked to a client who said, oh, I don't want to apply for citizenship under this administration because I don't like it. And I said, well, that's the reason you should file for your citizenship, because if you don't like this administration, you want to be able to vote. Así que aplicando la ciudadanía te da el derecho de votar en contra de la administración actual. Si tú tienes problemas con la política o quieres hacer tu voz, que le escuchen tu voz, tienes que votar. Esa es la manera. Y no puedes votar si no eres ciudadano americano.
Y en términos de por ejemplo, nuestra comunidad de la tercera edad, folks that are in their later stages of life, right? As we understand it, hay algunos beneficios, some benefits that they don't qualify unless they're U.S. citizens. Is that correct?
I've seen it before with people who have children that are disabled, and they're supposed to get like special benefits from Social Security or Medicare, and then it's like, oh, you've been a resident for 5 years already, so we're not going to pay you unless you become a citizen. I've only seen that in one case, and I'm sure that there's a lot of those issues that occur because it's not just Social Security or EBT. I mean, there's many different types of benefits that you can get that you're supposed to get as a resident, and then right now the administration is trying to scare people to not use benefits anymore, even though it's your right to, as a matter of law. So, sí, a veces te pueden denegar beneficios porque no has aplicado la ciudadanía. Puede ser por cosas médicas o especiales, lo he visto con gente que tiene niños muy incapacitados y eso. Y también la administración quiere dar a la gente problemas por aplicar a beneficios cuando tienen derecho debajo de las leyes. Y su vida es más fácil cuando ya tienes ciudadanía. Y nadie te puede tocar y decir no, eso es.
Correct. And I definitely want to hold on to that thought a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the benefits, right? A little later. There is another important topic that a lot of folks I know worry about and they think about, which is, you know, they worry about their family members and you know, family reunification, being able to petition for your family members. That is still a benefit of being a U.S. citizen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you cannot petition your parents. The person is an immediate relative if you're a citizen. So if you're a citizen and you want to petition your parents, you want to petition your kids, you can petition them very much faster than if you're a resident. And there are certain people you can't even petition if you're not a citizen. You can't petition your siblings if you're not a citizen. And everything's going to be so much faster. It's much more streamlined. The cases are taking a very long time right now under this administration, but they take way longer if you're a resident. If you're only a resident and you're petitioning, you know, even your spouse, it can take, you know, just 2 to 3 years just to get the visa available. But if it's your citizen spouse, it's a citizen who's petitioning the spouse. It's you know, it's just directly, there's a visa available, you just petition them. And the petition itself takes a while, but it's so much faster than if you're a resident.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just a lot of reasons, and you know, those are just some of them.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that I know that we didn't touch, which is something that you may or may not encounter, you know, your studies do show that your income does go up by almost 11% during your lifetime. So if you're waiting for any other reason to apply for citizenship, I mean, I think having a higher income definitely is one of them, which moves us to, you know, who and how do you qualify to apply for citizenship? We know that there's different pathways in terms of whether, you know, and there's some confusion between if it's 5 years or 3 years. How do we know who can apply under which rule? Let's say it's somebody that's you know, 20 years old and it's not married, just been a resident for 5 years. What does that mean?
Okay, well, first of all, you have to be 18 years old to apply. Secondly, the general rule is that you have to have been a permanent resident for 5 years before you can apply, and you can actually apply 3 months before the 5th year anniversary. There are exceptions for certain people. If you have asylum, for example, you can apply in the 4th year, I believe, rather than waiting the 5. If you gained residence through a marriage to a citizen and you're still living with that spouse at the time you apply for citizenship, then it's a 3-year rule. So that's really the exception to the 5-year rule. So típicamente necesitas tener 18 años de edad para aplicar la ciudadanía y generalmente 5 años de residencia antes de aplicar. Y las excepciones a eso son la gente asilado que pueden aplicar temprano en el 4º año y gente que casaron a ciudadanos para ganar la residencia y que se mantienen en relación con el esposo. Ellos pueden aplicar en el 3er año.
Y hay que esperar los 3 años completos. Cuando estás aplicando basado en un esposo, no puedes aplicar los 90 días antes. Tienes que esperar los 3 años completos. So if you're married to a U.S. citizen, it has to be 3 complete years. Some people think that they're going to be able to apply those 90 days early, like you can when it's 5 years, but you can't. You have to actually wait the entire 3 years.
Yeah.
And also, there's a requirement that you have to have already applied for your permanent residency, right? There's the conditional one that you come in with, but then you cannot apply unless you have that condition removed. Is that?
Well,
or how does that?
That one's complicated because on the 2nd year, and this is only for spouse cases, right? Then you have to show you're still married. And that's also if your marriage is less than 2 years old when you get the residence, because let's say you're married for years and then you do the residence, you don't have that problem with the conditional residence. So you're supposed to file the I-751 to remove the conditions, right? Even if that's still pending, once you hit the 3 years, you can file your citizenship. and then really what they're supposed to do is like approve both of them at the same time. But then that just gets complicated in immigration. I feel sometimes they try to delay that to make you wait 5 years, even though you're not supposed to wait 5 years. So that's a deeper territory. We gotta start talking about things beyond just applying. Then I have to get really serious with them.
Right, but I think they do have to file the 751 first
Yeah, absolutely.
before they do their citizenship. And I've seen it that people want to file the citizenship first and say, look, they're not going to decide your citizenship first. You have to do the 751. And it's better if they wait a little while before they do the citizenship so that it's pending, because the 751 takes a while now, longer than the citizenship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And definitely one, again, we want to stress, this is talking in general, every case, as Mark and Alicia can attest, every case is different. Every case has its own particular details. So it is important that you see an attorney if you're not sure, and even if you're sure, to just still corroborate that you're still eligible, and you hopefully the details of your case won't pose any threat to your residency here. We talk a lot of the folks that we see that we work with. A lot of them are in their later stages of life. They're elder folks, and many of them worry about that language requirement. Muchas veces nuestra comunidad de la tercera edad tiene esa preocupación sobre no hablar el idioma. Is this something that they should be worried about? Is it something that it is really something that won't allow them to apply for citizenship?
No, they can apply for their citizenship in their language, but make sure I get this time right. I think it's you have to be 50 years old and have 20 years of citizenship, or 55
Residency.
and have a residency, yes, or 55 and have 15 years of residency.
Yeah.
In order to file in your native language.
Yeah, and then if you're over 65 years old, the exam they have is a much easier one, the civics exam. And then also in certain cases where the person has a mental incapacity, that they can have a doctor sign off, so they don't have to speak in English or have to do the exam. Yeah. So
The worry though is about that what's called the medical exemption, right? This N648 getting approved. Is it hard for USCIS to make an adjudication in favor of the applicant? Do we see that?
Yes and no. It's not supposed to be hard. The problem really is getting the doctor to fill out the form properly. And then there's a section on the form that says, how does your disability prevent you from learning English? And usually they just put it like, he has Alzheimer's. And like, duh, right? You have Alzheimer's. Like, you're not going to learn anything. But immigration is like, no, he has to spell out a sentence and say, because he has Alzheimer's, he can't learn English, right? So it's kind of a grammar thing, and it's really stupid. And I've had to appeal those before and just say, like, why are you guys fighting over English? Like, you know the substance, right? So that's just one good example of what happens in immigration. Just, you have officers, not necessarily they're bad people, but like they might be incompetent, I would say. So that happens a lot.
Right.
Or they just try to follow the rules like too strictly, and like it doesn't make sense. But it's not something to be worried about. Like, you're not gonna get in trouble. Try, and if they deny you, just keep trying. There's nothing you lose there, except the filing fee and your time. But
Right. Entonces, para nuestra comunidad de la tercera edad no hay que preocuparse por el examen o lo del inglés. Hay ciertos requerimientos que pueden, por ejemplo, de tener 50 años de edad como mínimo y 20 años de residencia para poder aplicar y tomar el examen en su idioma. Y si no, y si piensan que no pueden calificar, no tener miedo de buscar un especialista que les ayude con la excepción médica, ¿verdad? La N648.
Pero hay que estar tomando medicina para el N648 y, o sea, tener las pruebas, que hay suficientemente pruebas para decir que tiene una condición que que le hace no poder tomar su examen, ¿no? Porque hay gente que solamente tiene más que nada problemas de memoria, pero no están tomando medicina, no tienen un diagnosis ni nada. Así que you have to go to the doctor and make sure that they give you medicine if you require medicine, that they have diagnosed you with a condition, not just that you can't remember things because of your age, because it does have to be well documented if you're going to do the N648.
And the other thing is certain doctors are put on a list of guys that immigration doesn't trust anymore. So, and that list doesn't exist, but it does, you know, so oftentimes they want to see that you're going to your normal doctor, right? The one that you've been seeing for the last 5 years, because if all of a sudden you have Alzheimer's and like it's the first diagnosis ever, that doesn't look too good, so.
Right.
We have a question. I have DACA, and I recently received a letter for a work permit from a U visa that I also applied for my DACA work permit, and it's still active for a year. Should I go ahead and file the work permit for the U visa even though I already have one through DACA?
So you're saying that he has deferred action from the U visa. So that's interesting, right? Because you could apply and they'll say, no, you already have a work permit, so we're denying you. Right, so then you just wasted the $410 on that application. So I would like the deferred. You have deferred action twice in that situation, from the DACA and the U visa. So I would just wait out the DACA and then apply for the U visa based on like 3 months before it runs out or so. But I mean, DACA still exists right now, so you know there's no need to be so scared. But you're in a very favorable position because you have 2 different reasons why you're protected from deportation. You know, so.
Yeah, I think that's something that they can think about if they did want to do the renewal, not now because you don't need it until it's expired. But if you wanted to wait until your current work permit is going to expire and refile it under the U visa instead of DACA, the only thing I would say is that DACA is a little bit on shaky grounds, whereas the U visa is not on as many political grounds. You know, it's a little bit more solid to have a U visa.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be there, but we don't know what's going to happen. What if they pass a law that gives residence to people with DACA? I mean, we have no idea, so I think you should just hold on to everything you have.
Yeah, definitely keep renewing the DACA regardless, right? The DACA, you want to keep renewing it.
And the other thing with the U visas is there's a 10,000 per year cap. So like if you file today, you're looking at like a 16-year wait for a decision. Yeah, there's like over 160,000 pending. So if you got your deferred action from the U visa today, I assume that you've been waiting about 4 years. So you might have a very long wait still for a final decision on your U visa. I would keep the DACA, and if you can do the advanced parole or have done the advanced parole in the past, then you might be able to apply for residence in a different way. So this is a lot more complicated than asking for citizenship, but I would hold on to that DACA as long as you can. You know, especially with the waits on the U visa, it's ridiculous right now. So.
Yeah.
And if you need more information, I would like to seek out more information on how to reach out to them and request a consultation. We'll share that information towards the end. Going back to citizenship, I know that there's a lot of confusion between what's continuous and what's physical presence. La gente no sabe si puede salir del país, por cuánto tiempo tiene que estar acá. What is the difference between continuous and physical presence in terms of requirements for citizenship?
Okay, I'll take the physical if you want to do continuous.
All right.
Okay, so the physical presence, you have to have 913.5 days exactly in the country during those 5-year period. That averages out to be about 6 months every year, right? And so the government wants you to live here in the United States. You need to be physically present at least half of the year, but it doesn't have to be exactly that the 913 days was 6 months, 180 days each year. It can be that you were here, 5 months 1 year and 4 another. I mean, they're going to add it all up. And so the total days you need to have that total physical presence under the 5 years. But then the continuous presence is something a little different. You want to show that you never abandoned your residency, and I'll let Mark answer about that.
Yeah, so one thing is staying outside the country for more than 6 months at a time. Normally, as a resident, when you travel, you're not treated as having left the country. But if you're outside more than 180 days, they could allege that you abandoned your residence and then try to put you in deportation proceedings. And then that's separate from the citizenship requirements. But then there's also a rule of the continuous presence. I think it's after you file the application, you have to maintain a presence here. And do you remember exactly? It's like 6 months in a year, right?
Right. Basically, average up to 6 months in a year. You've abandoned your residency if you've stayed out an entire 1 year. That's almost automatic, right?
Yeah.
But if it's less than that, like Mark was saying, anywhere from 6 to 9 months, they can still say that they don't think you live here anymore. And so you need to be maintaining, a residence here. You have bills here. You're paying taxes here. There are people that, that even though they're coming in and they're spending the physical time here, they have everything in their country. So that they don't pay taxes here. They don't have any bills here at all. It's trickier for them to show that they have a continuous presence in the country.
Yeah. So the easy answer is don't leave for more than 6 months at a time, ever. So that's another benefit of getting citizenship. You can enjoy your vacation, right? So, and also maintain your ties here. Have your bank account here, or have a rent, a car, or whatever, and pay your taxes here. Don't ever skip paying taxes here, because that's one of the first questions on the long list of questions of have you ever, right? Have you ever not paid your taxes while you're a resident? You're going to have a big problem. They're not going to approve you just for that, so.
Right, and we do see folks that sometimes they get approval for what's called a travel document, which is not given outright by USCIS, given by the Department of State. How does that document affect the traveling that they can or cannot do, and in terms of relation to the citizenship?
So you mean when they're outside the country?
Right, the travel document that gives them a re-entry.
They can get a re-entry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that's when you've been outside too long, and you just kind of, I don't want to say it's a pardon, but it's basically like assuring that you don't have a problem coming back. So I think you have to be at least outside a year or less than 2 years, and it's a special visa that you apply for, or I think you apply for it before you even leave.
Yeah,
right?
you can fly. If you need to be outside, say you have a family member who's sick, or you realize that you're going to have to travel a lot, you're going to want to get an I-131, a re-entry permit for your green card, so that you can be out up to 2 years, and the government's not going to give you any issues when you're trying to come back. But remember, that's going to count. That if you're out for an entire year or 2 years, you're not gaining the time that you need to apply for your citizenship.
Yeah, that's just to keep your residence. And also, if you're outside and your card happens to expire while you're outside the country, it's the same form, the I-131, but there's like a different box so that you can return on an expired card. But I think you have to do it within a year of having exited. So I think they started doing that last year. So I've had a lot of fun cases with the people with the expired cards coming in and trying to come in por la frontera when they're green card, when they're residents. Yeah, so tell me about it. So, just be very careful when you travel and make sure everything's in order. And like Alicia was saying, like if you're out for a very long time, the point is that whatever period you have to wait, whether it's 5 or 3, you need to be here at least half of that period. And then, it's always like when you're outside a lot, like just talk to somebody so you can calculate it and make sure you're fine. Because even if like you're missing a day of the half the time when you file, they don't care how much time you're here after you file. It's about strictly at the time you filed, what have you done in the last 5 years, 3 years, whichever. So.
Right, and that's calculated when you file. So even if your case took a year before you get the interview, you're still going to be short a day.
Yeah, definitely. And you alluded to what's part of the requirements, right? Which is the have you ever's, which is part of part 12 of the N400, which we call the good moral character, which is a fun big section. I was going to say fun little, but it's a fun big section. Just an overview of the intricacies of that and what can that mean if you say yes to any of these questions. Just a quick overview if possible. I know there's over 55 questions in that section.
Yeah, and it's going to get longer soon.
It may get longer soon yet, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about.
Well, basically, the government can use anything against you that's happened in the last 5 years, and these have you ever questions are trying to find out, even if you've been stopped by the police, but you weren't arrested, you weren't convicted, they can still use that against you. They ask things like, have you ever voted in an election when you obviously were not eligible to do so? They ask about things like child support. They want to know that you've always been supporting your children. And it's definitely the questions are very, very particular, and they also want to make sure that you're going to be telling the truth, because if there's any of these questions that you marked no and it should have been yes, they're likely going to find that out in the interview, and that can be, that alone, that you marked the answer wrong, can be used against you to say that you're not a person of good moral character if you don't bring it up and correct it at the interview.
Yeah, and not only that, it's also got loaded questions to see if you're deportable, right? So if you feel like there's a maybe to any of those questions, you really need to clarify with an expert. The other thing is, let's say you think, oh, they're not going to know about something, right? Because one of the questions is, have you ever done a crime you've never been arrested for, right? And let's say you're selling drugs, and no one's arrested you, they don't know, right? If you get your citizenship, you're sworn in, 5 months later, you get charged with conspiracy, and they said you've been doing it for 3 years, right? Obviously, you lied on your application. You're going to face criminal charges for lying on a citizenship application. You're going to lose your citizenship. You're going to get deported. It can be very nasty. So, like, you have to fess up, basically, because this is your only opportunity. And right now, what's the name of that project they're doing? Like, as of last year, to denazi everybody?
Yeah, they have a special group of people that it's like an agency that they've created to denaturalize people.
Yeah.
Que le busca si hay manera que lo quite tu ciudadanía. Entonces ese grupo está revisando toda la gente que ya son ciudadanos para ver si lo puede quitar. Así que es muy importante que si tú tienes una de esas preguntas que dice que si tú nunca lo había hecho algo, lo tienes que estar seguro que todo eso es verdaderamente no. Y si algo es cierto, debe de discutirlo con un abogado, porque es posible que te afectara eso en el futuro, que hasta después de que te recibe la ciudadanía te podría deportar.
Yeah.
Entonces, en términos de los dos requerimientos que hablamos, la presencia física y el viaje y el carácter moral, muy importante que consulte con un abogado si no está seguro sobre si tiene lo suficiente para no meterse en problemas en su aplicación. Que nos lleva al siguiente punto, que es cómo pagar, ¿verdad? Pagar la ciudadanía, cuáles son los costos. Sabemos que los costos han ido subiendo en los últimos 10, 15 años. Hoy en día estamos en $725. ¿Hay maneras de cómo pagar? Is there a way to pay for those $725 if you don't have the means? How can one know about that?
Well, you can get a fee waiver based on your income or other circumstances, or you can pay an intermediate fee of $420 or so, right? So basically, you need to show your taxes and maybe the payroll stubs for the last 3 months if you want to be overkill on that and just show, like, hey, I'm not making this up, but I'm really having a tough time. Or maybe, like, you do earn enough income, but, like, your house burned down or something, and you can show, like, a very exceptional situation where, like, you have to divert all your money to something and you have a financial hardship. You can make these applications for the reduced fee or to apply for free, right? So one, they're being tougher on those requirements request. Worst case scenario, they just send it back to you and say, hey, pay the fee, right? Or give me some more evidence. Two, there's this big scare right now about it if you're on benefits, right? So, so if you get your green card and you start using welfare within the first 5 years, they could try to deport you. It's in there, right? But like it's never been really used before. And the new rules, I don't know if they're out yet or they're
I
still
don't think
being
they're
worked out.
official yet, but
Yeah.
it's getting closer to a time that it could be. Right now, they're still proposed.
And the thing is, like what you've done today doesn't matter what the rules say tomorrow, because when the rules change, they only apply from the moment they change forward. So get your applications out now, right? So then, they might fight you on that, but like that's just a legal principle against retroactivity. So, that's. I wouldn't worry about it just yet. And really, that's a problem for people applying for residence, not so much applying for citizenship. So, I wouldn't worry about requesting a fee waiver. I mean, you have a legal right to do that. Like not everybody is rich, and they can't punish you for being poor. That's just disgusting, right? But we are in those times right now. So,
Right now, they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing, even though people have to be able to feed their children. They have to be able to take care of themselves while they're pregnant. And those same benefits that people are receiving, even for their children, could be used against them in the future. I would say that if you have the money to pay the fee yourself, es mejor pagar el dinero si lo tienes el dinero, porque si no le va a poner más problemas. Le van a chequear todo, a ver si tú cualificas por el fee waiver. Y no sabemos si eso te afectará en un futuro de un cambio. I don't know. I would just say if you have the money, it's probably easier in your case to pay the fee.
Yeah, and imagine you go to the interview and they figured out you lied on the fee waiver request. Yeah, you're gonna get denied, right?
Right.
So, if you can't pay it, I mean, you should, right?
Right, and there's other ways as well. I mean, there's microloans that we know. There's organizations that provide microloans, micropréstamos para ciudadanía, en caso de que no tengan el dinero para pagar o prefieran evitar usar el fee waiver.
And they take credit cards now to apply for the citizenship,
that's
right?
helpful.
So, at least you can have the credit card payments and do it slowly.
Right. Speaking of retroactivity, as you mentioned, that implementing of rules and changes to the policy, we know they take time, correct? It's not like they leak something and then it's going to change automatically. There's a period where there's research and comments to the government and then implementation. That takes a long time. However, those changes to policy don't necessarily correlate to if you've already done something prior, correct? So if you committed fraud for your green card, is that something that could affect potentially your eligibility for citizenship and or any convictions that you had between becoming a resident and the time that you are eligible for citizenship?
Well, okay, there's a few different things going on there. So if you did fraud on getting your residence, they could always try to deport you for that. Like, it doesn't matter if it's 20, 30 years down the road, because that's a basis for deportability, that you were not admissible at the time you got the residence. And it could be for a number of reasons. Maybe you had criminal history you didn't reveal, or you forgot to mention the fake marriage, or or you committed a fraud in the process of getting a residence. So that's one thing. But the other thing is, like, when they change a rule that maybe you wouldn't have gotten the residence under that new rule, but under the old rule you were perfectly able to, you're not in trouble. Like, but the problem is these guys that work at immigration don't understand these things because they don't read the actual law. Like, they get a little handbook, like an employee manual, like if you're working at McDonald's, like, so they don't really, you can show up there and actually show them the law and be like, dude, you guys are wrong, and like their eyes go blank. sometimes. So, it's not that simple. I mean, I've seen it that they're doing that. Actually, a friend of mine, it was a 245I case, and like at the time they didn't have to pay the penalty, but under the new rule they would have paid the penalty, and then they're trying to say like, hey, you didn't pay the penalty, and it's like, dude, your new rule came out many years later. What's wrong with you? So that's becoming like a lawsuit right now. Like it's not even like. That's another thing. Like they're trying to play these games, and like what happens at the local offices, they have their lawyers there, and they're just sitting over all the cases. They see repeat patterns, and then they try to come up with something that they can use to deny. Because it's really weird. Because for them, they win something by denying you your citizenship, right? Like I feel that's sometimes the mentality. Not everybody. I mean, there's a lot of good people there, but. It happens every once in a while where you have to crack your head and like, why are you making me fight you on this? Like, you guys are wrong, but it's just the nature of the beast, right?
Alicia, have you seen many of that in the cases that you've handled?
Yeah, I've seen that immigration is wrong a lot on especially cases that have to do with crimes that are maybe there was before 1996 or things like that. There's the rules apply differently at different times, and that's in any kind of crime, you really need to make sure that you have a good immigration attorney defending you and able to be with you at the interview. Because even if your attorney explains you qualified because of this reason, that when your crime happened and they've done research on it, you need to make sure that attorney is with you and likely also brought a brief with them to turn in at the interview, because these officers, they're not lawyers. And they don't know the law. Honestly, they get it wrong all the time. And so even if maybe you yourself did some research and you think you're okay about a certain crime, like, oh, this shouldn't have been a crime that affected me, you need to bring an attorney with you to the interview. It's really important.
Definitely. So, not to panic, right? No para entrar en pánico, pero definitivamente para consultar con personas que conocen de la ley de inmigración, que en este caso son abogados de inmigración. Definitely, we don't want to have any unlawful practice of the law, right? So for more of a reason to hire an expert, which there is so much information. The immigration law changes almost every year. Policy can change. There was just a new USCIS announcement on the N648 today that I just received an alert from, which is, again, this changes so often.
Oh, what happened?
That the N648 will now should be submitted with the application and not wait to the interview.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So we know it changes. I've seen the immigration handbooks. They're this big, very complicated. So we know that there's a lot of misconceptions on citizenship and the process itself. We know that folks are worried. What happens? Can you still be, for example, a citizen of another country if you become a U.S. citizen, or do you lose your citizen automatically?
So the U.S., they do make you, in your oath, say that you're renouncing all other citizenships. However, my experience, I don't know if Mark disagrees, but my experience, the U.S. doesn't really mind that you have double citizenship, in effect, right? There are certain countries that do not allow you to have more than one citizenship, and that they would have to forfeit their citizenship in their country if they become a citizen here in the U.S. But my understanding, you don't have to turn in your passports or anything like that if you become a citizen here.
I mean, it's against the common law. You're not supposed to have two allegiances, because it goes back to English law. Like, you only have one king, and right. So that still applies today. But the Department of State, they don't enforce it. They don't care. Basically, like, I mean, that's just doesn't make sense anymore, right? So that's not a big deal. Then you have your multiple passports. The thing is, if you apply for citizenship in a country after becoming a citizen here, that's when it gets a little interesting, right? I mean, there's no laws in place now, but I think at a time you would lose your citizenship even if you were born here if you got citizenship in the wrong country. Like, this is early 1900s, but there's no policy saying you can't do that.
Right.
At least today. But it could change tomorrow.
But it could change tomorrow, as we know. you going back to the civics and the U.S. history, we know. I mean, that usually young folks do not worry much, about the studying and whatnot. But I know the older folks, they do. How hard is the test really? ¿Cuán difícil es el examen de ciudadanía, la cívica y la historia?
Son 100 preguntas, okay, and they're only going to ask you 10 of those civics questions. Así que, más que nada, tiene que estudiar. Si lo estudias estos 100 preguntas porque no sabe cuál de los 10 que te iban a dar, tú puedes estar muy bien. And actually, you may ask you even fewer than 10 questions. If you get the first 5, 6 right, they're not going to even ask you more than that. It's not hard, but you have to spend some time practicing.
Yeah, you just gotta get 6 out of 10. So, and then they are supposed to give you the easier questions depending on like your situation if you're older. So it's in their manual. Like if somebody has struggles, like maybe you don't qualify for the medical exemption, but like you're almost there, they're supposed to give you the easy questions. Like I had a case where the man had Alzheimer's and the doctor couldn't fill out the form correctly, and they made him do the test. After 40 minutes, he passed. Right? The officer was really like giving him half the answer. If you're a good guy, I mean, they're not going to give you a problem. It's just like if you have something in your history that they don't like and like you got away with it, they're cops in their head, they're cops, right? So, that's another thing.
We know that these facilities where you do the interviews, the USCIS offices, they by law, especially because they're so recent, a lot of them, they have to be ADA, right? The Disabilities Act. But what happens if you have a physical disability, like you cannot see far, you cannot hear? Do they help you out with this?
Well, first you make sure you get the form correctly, because it asks you on the form, but yeah, they're supposed to. So if you have hearing problems or vision problems or you're in a wheelchair, I mean, they have to accommodate you. The form. I mean, one just generally all across the board, regardless of what you're applying for. But the citizenship application specifically asks for that. I imagine someone did a lawsuit one time, and
Sure.
that's why it's on the form. But they have to accommodate you.
Have you had any experience, Alicia, with any disability?
I haven't actually had an experience with this specifically, but I would say that if you're hard of hearing, then they would, or seeing something like that, then they would probably allow you to bring someone to help you, or they would speak louder, things like that. I'm not really sure how they accommodate you, but I've seen people with wheelchairs in there before, so I'm sure they make a way for them to fit people with wheelchairs. But I've had people ask me if USCIS would come to them, and I'm pretty sure they don't. I don't know.
No.
I don't think they're going to come to you in the hospital or anything like that, but they would allow you, they'll try to do what they can within reason to comply with the ADA.
Which is to say that if you miss an appointment for a medical reason, it can get, or for any other reason, it can get rescheduled.
Yeah.
Most likely.
To not lose the appointment, but if you can reschedule it, they will.
Every office is different, but I went to one that they said what they do is they hold a file for 30 days to see if you submit a letter saying like, oh, wow, I got in a car crash or something like that, or whatever reason, right? And then they'll give you a new interview. How quickly you'll get the new interview is a different question, but it'll keep the application alive. The other thing is like what happens when you're so disabled that you can't even communicate. Because you have to do an oath of allegiance, right? So there's a special procedure where you can get a waiver of the oath of allegiance, and this is extremely different, right? Like it's like people with severe autism or something even worse than that. You have to have a guardian appointed or one of your parents, and then you don't have to take the exam. Like somebody comes and does the answers for you. But that's a very rare case.
Very rare cases, but
yeah,
they facilitate.
Yeah, there's a procedure for that.
And what happens if you don't pass the test? Can you retake it?
You get a second
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah, they give you one more chance.
Yeah.
And then if you don't pass it the second time, you can always reapply.
But it implies that you have to
Wait and
Wait
pay.
again.
Yeah, wait again and pay
Yeah,
again.
true.
So pass it the second time, please. Study while you're
Yeah.
waiting for that second exam.
So now we know that the process used to take, I remember it used to take 6 months at most sometimes, right?
Or faster. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I remember when it
faster.
was like 3 or 4 months.
Right, and but we know nowadays that the wait times are even into a year and a half, maybe close to 2 years. So what happens? Can I travel? Can folks go out of the country while they're waiting, or they're locked here in the U.S. until they become U.S. citizens?
So that's where the special continuous rules are. I think.
Your continuous presence.
Yeah, there's different rules for different applications, but I think if you get aggregate of 6 months outside the country while it's waiting, there's a presumption that you abandoned the application, and then you gotta prove that you didn't. And then like if your total time outside is like a year, they're gonna deny the application. It might be different numbers, but there is a system like that in place. So, that's something, it should be on the form instructions, just double check, right? So,
You can travel. You can travel while it's pending, but just be aware that your time is still, your clock is still ticking, and you could still lose your continuous presence. So you need to make sure you're always, obviously you have to be here for the interview, right? And you have to be here to take the test. But other than that, you could go out for a couple months, something like that. Make sure you have someone who's checking your mail.
yeah.
Right, and so you alluded to it earlier, which is a lost green card or expired green card. Can you still apply for citizenship if it's expired or if you lost it?
Absolutely. So they tell you have to apply to renew the green card. And technically, if you just show up with the receipt saying the renewal's pending, that they're not going to give you a hassle. But actually, nothing requires it at all.
So you could have been a resident for 40 years and have one of those little paper green cards, and you could
Okay. Some cards never expire. So I think there's a little laminated card.
The laminated old one
Yeah.
doesn't have any expiration.
And it has your photo as a kid, right? So, those never expire; they're valid for life. And then, but even if your 10-year card is expired,
the white one, you mean?
Yeah,
You're right.
right. Even if that's expired, doesn't matter. You can get naturalized with an expired card. There's nothing that requires it. The problem is
The officers don't always know that.
exactly.
Issues that I've had.
So do you want to spend the time fighting over that? Just pay the renewal fee and say, here, I have the renewal pending, right? And just the receipt. It's a waste of money, but
It's unfair, but it's the safest thing to do because I've heard it. Other clients have let me know that their case. It wasn't my client, but someone else had said that their case was denied because their green card had been expired, which was that was improper and they should have appealed.
yeah.
Right? But people don't always follow by the rules. So if you have the money to do the renewal as well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I know that these two topics, and we talked a little bit about before both of them, and they require more in-depth exploration. You mentioned public charge, or what's going on about getting benefits from the government. It does not outright affect citizenship. That affects you when you're making an adjustment of status.
Yeah.
Right. So again, please consult with an immigration lawyer. A lot of the things that are being sent out that are being made public, they have a lot of legal language. It's confusing, but not everything that's being said is being made into law, which is something that we're encountering a lot. A lot of folks saying, "Oh, this new law came out," when it's just maybe a leak of a possible policy, which is definitely to.
Yeah, that was a scare tactic where it was a leak, right? Yeah, sure. A lot of if it was a leak for real, somebody would be in jail right now. So I think it was they just released that to kind of scare people, So.
And the unfortunate thing is it's scaring people from taking their kids out of programs that they need or feeding their families, because U.S. citizen children have the right to receive food stamps or SNAP and all those other programs. They have that right, but this proposed rule is saying that even if your children got these benefits, it's a very negative factor that they'll consider against you. So it's something more than anything to scare people. But you just have to be careful if you're receiving benefits. Make sure that you're eligible for them. Your U.S. citizen children are, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't affect you in the future. So it's something unfortunately that's going on right now politically.
Yeah.
Importante educarse, de averiguar la información correcta, de consultar con abogados de migración para ver si hay alguna cosa que está sucediendo en su caso le va a afectar negativamente. And this, to last point on scaring, this denaturalization task force, right? Esta fuerza que está para quitarle la ciudadanía a los que ya se han hecho ciudadanos. Is that something that folks have to worry about moving forward?
That's a rare case that you lied about something, right? So classically, that's been against people who've done persecution. Usually former Nazis were the more famous cases. I think like 2 or 3 years ago, some guy who was a general in El Salvador, back in the war where they were doing a lot of genocide, he got deported. He won asylum and became a citizen, and then they took it all away. So that's kind of funny, right? The persecutor gets the asylum and not the persecuted, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But now they're doing it for criminal history on people who didn't reveal it all, because I have clients that they're not angels, right? And then it takes a long time to find all their old cases, and then show it. And then what happens, like you take your fingerprints when you apply, but sometimes they didn't do the background check. That's what they're doing. There was a lot of cases where they didn't complete the background check and granted the citizenship, and now they're going back and completing the background check. It's like, whoa, we made a mistake. But see, it's them not doing their job and then blaming you for them not doing their job. So,
Right, and some of those are
Yeah.
people that basically they needed a waiver when they got their green card, but the government didn't ask them for it, which really wasn't their fault because they would have likely filed the waiver if they were asked. But either way, if there's any procedural or any kind of defect in the green card itself, then they could always say that you didn't deserve to get your citizenship. They are in fact going against looking in these. I don't know who gets red flagged and who doesn't. But they are looking to see if there are any errors in the reason that you got your green card and the reason that you got your visa the first time, anything, to see if they could take away your citizenship. But I would say it's not something everybody should worry about. If you're a citizen, that you have to freak out. But it's people who hid something along the way, maybe. That just be careful before you file for citizenship if you don't really qualify, and you're going to know when you fill out the application if you don't qualify.
yeah.
And while this was focused on citizenship, but I know we did get a question on something that was not citizenship. There's a grand majority of folks that are DACA, TPS, are undocumented, that would love to apply for citizenship, but they don't know.
Yeah.
Do they have any solution?
Well, first they have to apply for residence.
Green card first.
Yeah. And then there are solutions in many cases. You just have to get really creative. Like I have 4 cases right now we're applying for NACARA, and NACARA was amnesty in the year 2000, right? So these are people that were eligible the whole time and never did the application because I guess they didn't feel the need to spend the money or they didn't realize, right? And then a lot of them are eligible for 245I and they didn't realize it, and or you can do the 601A waivers and things like that. So there's a lot of answers there, and there's a lot of litigation going on right now with TPS, like whether you can just apply for residence even if you came through La Frontera, right? So things are changing, and it's just always don't wait until you lose your TPS to start looking, because having the CARA TPSs, deportation orders, we reopened them, we're getting the green card now, and then for other reasons too, not just that.
So what would you say, Alicia, to those folks that don't know, get an attorney?
Definitely you should get an attorney. There are really complicated, the law is very complicated with immigration, and a lot of immigration law was passed at the end, one piece of it was passed at the end of some spending bill. It's not like you can just find all of immigration law in one place and understand it. You really do need an immigration attorney who's experienced in the law to know if there's some minor exception that that you might qualify for. So anybody with TPS or DACA or any kind of status right now, or even if you don't have status, you should talk to an attorney to see if there's anything that could be done for you.
Where can we find you, Mark?
On the internet, just Google my name, Mark Prada.
Mark Prada?
Yeah.
Alicia?
Alicia Morgan, you could call me at 305-501-0783, and our main office is in North Miami.
Wonderful. If you have any further questions, please submit them. We'll work to have another one of these. I want to thank to all the viewers, and thank you, Alicia and Mark, for being here, for your commitment to the community and willingness to share your knowledge with us. 1-888-600-5762 is the Florida Immigrant Coalition's hotline. 1-888-600-5762. Call us. We'll connect you to wonderful immigration attorneys and find a solution for you. Give us a call.
Thank
Bye.
you.